another exciting episode of Cops and Cons. My name is David Dowling. I'm your host with my co host, Officer James Wethington, here to talk about today. What are we talking about today, Jim?
I think we're going to talk a little bit about alternatives to prison and revisit the Kim Gardner situation because there's been a few developments since we last mentioned her.
That's right. The Attorney General, or the what do they call them? Is that what their name? No, she's not the
Yeah,
Attorney General.
Attorney
What is
General
she?
Bailey. Yeah.
Yeah, but what's her
She's a
title?
circuit attorney.
Circuit Attorney, that's right. The
Yeah.
lead prosecutor in St. Louis. And so she's up there trying to remove her from office, and she placed the blame on her subordinates. Now many of them have quit, and they're down to what, five prosecuting
5
attorneys
with
now?
one on sick leave. Yeah.
Yeah, so four people handling St. Louis's mega murder caseload.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out. Not looking real great. But let's start on the alternative to sentencing. So I, for one, understand, I'm sure you do too, that prison is a necessary evil.
Yes.
Certainly it is. But one of the big constant debates about it is, what is prison? Is it a correctional facility, which they call it now, which implicates that there is correction to behavior going on? And what kind of correction? What's the implications behind the correction? Is the correction punishment? Is it both? And what other alternatives are there? And you and I discussed earlier in the week about how they used to, at least during the Vietnam War era, where you could either go to jail.
Yeah, years
Yeah,
ago.
and you could go to jail or you could join the military.
That was an old solution to people getting a second chance or a last chance.
Right. And, and a lot of those people were poor, like I was, when I went to prison, I was broke. And honestly, I would have liked it. I would have liked to have the option to join the military. One thing that I did get in prison, which I guess falls under the correction, was structure in my life. So I got up at a certain time. I made my bed. I went to work. I ate my meals at a certain time. I worked out at a certain time. I learned the structure of prison. And honestly, I thrived in it because I never had any structure before. But when I was structured, I had successes, which people like, success. You're in prison. What kind of success? Well, successes as far as not getting in trouble. I got the better jobs. I was respected by staff. I was respected by my fellow inmates. I had a pretty good run. I felt confident coming out of there that I could traverse the playing field that I was getting out on, and I've done pretty well. I mean, I'm doing all right. Yeah,
Structure's a good
but
thing.
it's a necessary.
Structure's a good thing. Most of the times, in order to achieve a goal, you have to put some sort of patterns and structures in place. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants all the time,
Well, and you have children,
especially as you're
right?
growing up.
Right. And you have children, and as you're raising children, you teach them this is what time bedtime is, this is what time we eat, you eat snacks. And now certainly there's different things fall in there. I mean, you don't want to be overly rigid, not in the family system. In the prison system, you have to be pretty rigid.
Right.
And
A little
right,
different.
but the kids who grow up learning structure are generally the kids that end up more successful in their relationships and in their jobs and in their goals in life, in my opinion.
Had structure.
Right, with structure, in their lives. So for a young person to go to prison, and now sometimes in some prisons it's always different, but in the prison I went to at first, it was a maximum security prison, and they had programs there. So I joined an intensive therapeutic community, right? And it was run by basically guys with life without parole, guys who've been down 20 plus years. And it was intense, man. I mean, they had you out marching. You had to keep your shirt tail tight. I mean, it was intense, man. It was like, it was hard. I mean, really
Really?
hard. Oh, yeah. Like if 20 guys joined at one time, only about 4 or 5 of you would actually complete the program. It was a year-long program. It took me 2 tries.
Really? It's like the Navy SEAL of prison camps, huh?
I mean, it really
Got to ring
was.
the bell 3 times to get out.
Yes, it was just like that. I mean, you'd have to go, like, if you got pulled up, they'd call it a pull up, right? If another inmate pulled you up for your behavior, say you were cussing, like there was no cussing in there, you had to have your homework done, whatever, all this stuff done. There was a lot of rules, real petty. And if you got a more serious pull up, you'd have to sit in the middle of the ring on your hands and everybody come out and tell you exactly what they thought about you, and you weren't allowed to say anything else. You just sit there and took it, and then you'd have a little punishment like write some papers, or you might be on where you can't talk for a day or two. I mean, it was serious, and
That is crazy.
it
Now
was,
let
and
me ask you something. Can I ask you something?
absolutely.
When people said, now they had to say the truth though. They couldn't just be like saying ignorant, right?
They couldn't just be attacking your character. They had to be
Right.
talking about
Right.
the specific behavior that you were out there for. They can't just come out and say, "Hey,
Right.
Dave, you're a freaking piece of shit. I just don't like you. The way you carry yourself." No, they couldn't do
Right. I want to tap into the thing you said the other day that I know
that.
that bothers you. Let's talk about your mother.
Right, right. Yeah, no doubt. No, and I didn't go well with mom jokes when I was a kid, for sure.
Right.
They'd
Right.
they'd turn the chair around. Now you'd be two of you sitting out there, and I seen that happen too, and guys. But I got a lot out of that, and the guys that I still know today, that I still talk to from prison, that went through that program. You know, most of us that did the program are doing well now, and those who really scoffed at it and kind of blew you down, made fun of you. And then also with the program, after you completed it, you had a little better chance of getting the better jobs in prison, like I did. Like I read books
Yeah.
onto MP3 for the blind. Right. So I had a little studio and stuff. I had a cool little job in prison, made a couple $100 a month. I had my own little office. It was cool. So you got
That's good money in prison.
right. And then I taught classes on it and was like a facilitator for the restorative justice. And we'll talk a little more about restorative justice. But I want to kind of talk about this thing about the service. I really think they need to maybe go back to that in some
Come up
way.
with a plan.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the prison system's out of control. Right now we're starting to get back into that lock 'em all up mentality, and I can't hardly argue it because look how crazy things are getting. But you gotta be careful.
That's because nobody's tried to strike a
Well,
balance.
that's it, and you got to be careful with that because I sat there and I would see when I leveled down from a maximum security prison into a medium security prison, it was real different. From when it was dirtier, lots of younger people with no structure. Guys were just passing through, causing trouble. They only had small sentences. They didn't give a shit about anything. Only thing they really respected was fear. And if you'd been down a long time like I had, they were kind of scared of you a little bit, thinking, well, maybe. And so you kind of got some respect for that. Anyway, but I just used to hate seeing 20, 22-year-old kids sitting around all day, gambling, getting high, not doing no job, fighting, bullshit, and joining little bullshit gangs, all this.
Right.
And I mean, what do you
Well, the
what are you creating here? Who you letting back out of here? I mean, why are we allowing that?
Well, the military actually is the one that put the kibosh on go to prison or go to jail because eventually they're like, hey, we can't keep accepting people in. In order to go in now, you got to get a pretty big waiver from a general over that specific area that you're looking to join. I know a guy that when I went in to the army back in 1995, I went in with a good friend of ours, Keith Pig, and another friend tried to join with us. And
No, yeah, I love
yeah,
Keith.
Keith's hilarious.
Yeah, I love Keith.
He just turned 50 years old.
Hard to believe.
He's like Sally O'Malley, kick, stretch, kick again. He likes to kick, stretch, and kick again.
And kick. Yeah, that's great.
So this guy couldn't get a waiver. He had done a really stupid thing on a dare. He did a robbery with another guy, and I believe the person that tells the story, the only reason he did it is because the other guy was right there and they had dared each other. Which, what a stupid reason to get a robbery conviction. What a dumb thing.
Well, but you know how young guys are. Young guys, were real. The camaraderie is very important. When I was between the ages of 16 and 25, I mean, I wanted to ride with my guys. I mean, it was really important to me, and
Right.
that was more important to me really than my own family unit at that time because my family was in a bit of disarray back then. And I felt like I didn't like to go home a lot and all that kind of stuff. And so I stayed out there with these guys, and they had the same kind of problems. We related, and we kind of fed off each other's,
Idiocy.
nonsense, really.
Oh my gosh.
Right. But when I see guys in prison, I see these young guys, and they want to be for something. So they're easy to recruit for gangs because they want to be a part of something. So my solution is thus: if you get locked up under the age 30 and under, it's not a sexually based crime or
Violent.
a
Mhm.
maliciously violent crime, right? And if I say violent, I mean actual violence occurred, not the threat of violence, not all that stuff. If actual violence occurred and you actually harm somebody seriously, then you got to go do the real prison time. You got to do it. Threat, whatever, that's different. If no one was actually hurt, then you would fall into the category, and you have to make that clear because laws are real weird. I'm considered a violent offender and I never actually committed any violence. You know what I mean?
Right, you're not trying to
Not trying
spin
to
it or anything.
downplay what I did to get in trouble with or anything, but to call me a violent criminal who's never actually hurt anybody. Not, and I don't mean that like I didn't scare
Right.
victims. I'm very victim sensitive. So I just want to say I never physically harmed someone during the course of a crime. I didn't shoot anyone. I never pointed a loaded gun at anyone, any of that type of stuff. So that being said,
We're not counting, fights at a party when we were kids, right?
oh,
I'm
come on. I'm
just
not talking
kidding, I
fist
know.
fights. I'm talking serious, I'm saying
No, I know that,
aggravated
right.
crimes, as they call
Oh my
them.
gosh.
Right. Because we'd both be doing 300 years if we got 10 years for each fist fight between the ages of 16 and
This
19.
yeah,
I
the
mean, that's going to
stupid
happen.
things that we
It
did.
wasn't as, right. But it wasn't as scary back then to get in a fist fight.
No, you could get in a fist fight and everybody would walk
I mean,
away,
I'm
yeah.
friends with plenty of people that beat me up. I wouldn't have any friends. I'd be scared to death out there to get in a fist fight nowadays.
The funny thing too is you were talking about going riding with your buddies and running around. There was this ridiculous unwritten rule that if I rode with you in a car and you get in a fight at this party, you got to back me up.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, I don't even.
Right.
Okay, you had a car. I jumped in your car with you here,
Right.
but okay.
In fairness to the guy with the car, you should make that clear before you go over that you do get in fights every time you go to a party. Which, usually I was cool though. I waited to the end of the party when nothing else seemed like fun. Then got in a fight. I
Right,
didn't ruin the party when there were still a lot of girls around and everything was fun. We got down to about the
right,
last 10 guys. If 4 or 5 of them weren't from my immediate group, maybe it's time to get wrestling around in the backyard or
right.
something. But anyway,
Let's spice this thing up.
right. So, like I was saying with my idea, would be okay. So we've already said sex offenders, serious violent offenders excluded, drug pushers, petty thieves, all these guys. If you get to the point where
Shoplifters.
this kind of stuff, right? Property crime people, drug crime people. You get to a point, you're getting ready to get prison time. You have the option to go through a prison style boot camp and program, which includes drug counseling, emotional counseling, marching, all the stuff you might go through in a boot camp setting. You go through that, then you can get cleared to go into the actual army. And another thing that I think needs to be done is utilize our National Guard. Bring in the National Guard to run these boot camps. Let some actual military people, along with counselors and therapists, and make sure everyone knows who is actually in charge and what can be done because the infighting with staff and therapy and stuff like that in these prisons it brings everything to a standstill. So it should be really put in who's in charge. Let guys get things, earn privileges and such, and earn an opportunity to go serve their country and go. And after that, that was your opportunity. And these young men would learn structure, pride, self discipline, emotional control. All these things I think would come out of it good, and you serve your country. And yes, there is a chance that you might die for your country, right? But I would rather die for my country
Right.
than die in the street over $18. Okay, that's me. At least I'm out and have something to be proud of now. Oh, but it'll just be the poor. Well, you know what? It's not going to be perfect in there either. Everything's not fair all the time. And that's another great lesson that everything isn't fair all the time.
Right. Well, poor people go
Well,
in the military. Enlisted people are
right.
poor. It's poor country. I was in. It was poor guys. It was guys that wanted to get out of the city, and those end up being the career most of the time, not all the
Right.
time. End up being the career military guy because they can't go back to
Right.
their little farm town.
But
This is giving them a better
but
life than most of. They come back with more money in their pocket
right.
than their
But this is
cousins.
America is the land of opportunity, not the land of free everything. Come on, man. Everything's not going to be fair all the time. It's a competition, just like life's a competition. You're going to have to succeed. Yes, it's going to be competition with compassion. I'm going to say, I mean, it's just not going to be fair all the time. Well, would these same things be extended to women? I can see them being extended to women. If they wanted to do that, I mean, that could be
Sure.
extended to women. Well, what if they're not physically capable? Then don't do crime.
Right. Well, consequence is just that. It's a consequence. So the consequence of doing your thing is at least you're getting a second chance. See, I like that twist you have where it's kind of a pre basic training or a pre boot camp
Right.
because
You have to earn the chance to go do it.
right, no, yeah, you can't just show up and
Right.
be ready to go and let's get this guy out and hand him a loaded
No.
M16 and take him out to the range. I was in the military. There was a kid that I was in with from Hawaii, and he was involved in a leaving the scene of the accident. And he was told by the judge, if you join the National Guard, I will show you some leniency. But it was a leaving the scene of the accident. So it's not like he had to really get a huge, staunch waiver, and the judge was on board, and the recruiting office was on board and he was going to be in the National Guard. And he was a nice kid. He was a cool kid, really. You know, he was the only one in my company that knew how to surf. That's for sure. And he's the only person I know of
Charlie don't surf.
that yeah
I thought I'd throw that in there.
that had a go to the yeah, it was nice. A go to the army or go to jail mentality or opportunity because the courts have gone away with that because the military didn't want anything to do with kind of the cast offs. But there is a senator or a state congressman in Florida that has reintroduced a bill to allow for those kind of opportunities again for at least Florida citizens.
Right. And, there's just so many hurdles. Like, one of the things that, like, inside of a prison, there are people in the prison who look at it like corrections and want to be helpful. And there are other people in the prisons that look at it as penitent, as penitentiary. And it's both. But some are real extreme, just like politics in the world. Some are extreme in one way and some are extreme in the other way. So let's say that, like I said, inmates were running this particular program in the ITC at Jefferson City Correctional Center. And like is going to happen in really any organization, police organization, church organization, club, gang, a shopping center, somebody's going to do something wrong, right? Somebody's going to
Yeah,
take
that's
money to
life.
get their buddy through the program easier so he can get an easy out day. And they would catch a guy doing something like that or breaking some rules, or maybe one of the counselors gets caught getting high. Oh, well, then the extremes into the penitentiary type people would say, see, it's all bullshit. Shut that shit down. Don't give them nothing. Lock them down,
Right.
instead of saying, okay, we caught you. You're removed. Your opportunity's over, and make it clear to the other people if you do this, your opportunity is over and it's not coming back for this amount of time. Now, when I was there at Jeff City, it had gotten so strict. If you got a dirty urine, you couldn't have a job in the prison for 5 years except in the chow hall,
Holy
which is the
cow.
worst job for 5 years because everybody there at that time was doing big time, double digit time, I should say. So it really did keep people from doing the drugs. It just centered down to the main people who do a lot of drugs. When they rescinded it and said, "Oh, that's too harsh," boom, it took off again. So, in my opinion,
What's wrong with the kitchen? Why is that such a shitty
it's just
job?
hot and dirty, and you got to get up at 4 in the morning and do it, and it doesn't pay. Yeah, you can get an extra sandwich and stuff. I mean, some guys like it. I'd ever worked in it. I didn't want to do it. I felt like I was better than it. I was like a hoi polloi prisoner. I thought I was better than the kitchen. Yeah, I mean, I worked on
You're a
computers.
prison elitist.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, well, I may be at the bottom of the barrel, but I don't have to be.
I'm reading a book over here. Get off my.
Right. And I don't want to insult a lot of guys because without guys who could cook, you know, you could tell the difference when they fired the baker and you got a new one, the difference between a muffin and a rock, like, damn, I guess Bill ain't working back there anymore, you know, dang, we gotta get him out. But, and another thing is,
KP sucked in the army. It
R
sucked.
right, and it's a difficult situation for staff and inmates, but, like, there was 8 housing units at Jefferson City Correctional Center. Well, 4 of them were administrative segregation or the hole. So half the camp is the hole.
Wow.
What's that tell you? So you have all this bed space. Prison runs off bed space, alright? So if you're in the hole and you're done with your sentence, say, oh, you got 10 days in the hole. This is what used to happen at Jefferson City. We'll give you 10 days in the hole. Okay, 10 days goes by. All right, we'll let you out as soon as we get you a bed. Well, that might be 3 months. So you're in the hole for three. Right.
Oh
So you
wow.
did your 10 days. Well, now you're just waiting on bed space for 90 more. So that's really 100 days in the hole because you're still in the hole. We're just not punted. Right. You're still sitting in the same room. You're not in the hole anymore, but you can't
And
come
that
out.
gets them
And then,
ahead in the and
right. And then they lock somebody up
congratulations.
and you could
Yeah.
come out and you got that bed or someone got released. So it was so tight that it was very unfair, and it was kangaroo court and it was nuts, so you were deathly
That's
afraid to
nuts.
go to the hole. 10 days doesn't be laughed like, oh, I only got 10 days. Like, you see, in 6 months, not to
Good luck,
mention,
sucker.
right, right. It's going to be a long 10. They don't count by 24 hours down there. And I saw people really get seriously mentally ill over the stuff. I mean, it's not really that funny. Like, there's one place in Eight House that Jeff said he was like the end of the world. Like, you were down there on a concrete slab and a blanket, and that's all you got.
Wow.
Nothing else. I mean, nothing else. And you might be down there a year and a half, say if you attacked an officer or something. But then,
That's lonely.
ooh, ooh, and everybody else just screams and yells and pulls out their hair and smears poop all over the walls all day. Yeah, it's a rough day. It's a rough year down in old A House. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's a lonely. I mean, we're not meant to be. We're
No,
social
but
creatures, so that is a especially to tack on 20 more
well,
days
it
to
is.
your fake
But
10.
prison management is a very serious study, and I have a lot of experience in it, obviously, but I don't have a lot of solutions because I do know this, and it's true in my life. One thing the criminal understands: consequences. And that's about it. You can plead with the alcoholic to quit drinking, but until something really, really painful happens, I'm not going to listen. All right. Some people do, some people don't. Same with the criminal.
Yeah.
Pleading with him, and he'll sit. And I used to sit when people would give me great advice, and I agreed with them, and I knew they were right, and I'd go right back out and do it. I don't know what that was or what it is. Some of it was addiction, some of it was emotional problems, I'm sure. I don't really care anymore. All I care about is I'm not doing it anymore, and that's
Right.
far
Yeah.
behind me.
I like how you're like, I'm not going to try to dissect that section of my life.
No, I don't,
I didn't know that I didn't listen.
I for
That's all I need to
I
know.
forgave my parents for being people, except that I was just a person, but I could do better, and I have, and that's about it. I keep it that simple, because it's kind of a tendency, and I heard it on some show today where I was watching Mad Men, and he's Don Draper's in there. His wife's having a baby, and the other guy in there, his wife's having a baby, happened to be a CO at Sing Sing. And he said, they all say the same things. They just blame their parents. And here I am having a kid. I don't want them to blame me. And there's a whole bunch of truth in that, because it's a tendency to say,
There is something to say about that.
and in some people's defense, I know a lot of guys who did go through a lot of abuse, who did suffer a lot of neglect. But even in those cases, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to forgive it and move on and stop using it as an excuse for your own behavior. I mean, if you don't.
Well, there is so many influences. So those super Christian right wing people, the Baptist parents that think everything their child does is a direct reflection on their parenting. That's an extreme too that doesn't work out. That kid resents you in a different way. And then you have the low functioning parent that ever but there are 400 different biological factors that make up who you're going to be. Your parents can only influence so much. Now they have a huge impact, huge,
Well, sure.
but they're not the end all be all of how you're going to turn out.
And I don't want to downplay anyone's hard feelings or what they suffered through as young people. I suffered through some abuse myself when I was young and some neglect, but it came a point where when I finally got to the prison point, and I hope maybe this could save even one person from having to get that far, but I had to say, at this point right now, it doesn't matter what they did.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to have to move past these feelings and start focusing on what I'm doing wrong. Like, as bad as maybe I thought my dad was, he never ended up in prison. I did. Well, maybe he should have. Yeah, maybe he should have, but he traversed his field enough not
Right.
to, and I
Right.
didn't. So I need to learn how to be more successful at life. And if I want to have those things, and I can say, those things he did to me are things I don't want to do to others. But as we know, hurt people hurt people. I get that. But at some point, you got to turn that microscope on yourself and say, all right, what am I doing? What do I need to change? And the great thing about having inmate to inmate stuff is the best help I got was from guys with life without parole who sat across from me and told me, you know what, man, your freaking anger makes you really an attractive person, man. The way you pout and really hit it to me and more, and it stunk, but I knew that they had nothing really to gain from what they were telling me. And even if they did, I had to admit it was true
Yeah.
you know and so all the buildup with the pull-up system with the inmates, people say, oh, they're just telling each other. Well, you're just telling each other to each other, and you're having to learn how to deal with the anger emotions and the way you look at things. So when I come home in the world today, I can tell you right now, friend of mine or not, if you're out here and I see you doing a crime, I'm calling the police. I'm a regular citizen who pays his taxes and wants to live in a nice community, and I don't care about what I've ever done. I paid my price, I paid my bill, and I don't want other people to do it. And I thank God someone called the police on me. So I went, God helped me, and I got the help I needed. And now I'm back home, rebuilding relationships, feeling like a man, a decent man, paying bills, getting mad about politics like everybody else. It
How do
feels
you
great.
think
Wh-
how do you think it would have looked for you though had you had a judge that gave you the old go to the army or go to jail?
I think when I was younger, and I don't think maybe this last time I went a little too far. Maybe I needed to cool off longer than that. But I think if before I was 25, when I first started getting into trouble, and I would have gotten that option, I believe things would have turned out a lot different. If I would have first had to go through that, not just straight to boot camp, but through that prison and that therapy and those steps and hear some things about criminality and, inside the criminal mind. And I've read these books, Dr. Saminow, a little bit of AA and stuff. And I don't preach a bunch of all that to everyone, but there's a lot of merit in these steps and in these systems. And you have
Yeah.
to be open minded to say, hey, even though maybe that doesn't fit the description of me completely, what do I see that does fit?
Right. What
Like to me, it's like, well,
you can find an answer in there
right.
if you're open.
If you're just looking for things to find wrong with something, you're going to find it. Everything's not perfect and nothing's perfect. That's the real story. And if you're looking for perfect, well, you're going to find yourself in a pretty rigid system where nobody even gets a chance to succeed or feel joy, in my opinion. But
If you're looking for perfect, you're going to blame people for mistakes.
right, you're not
Yeah.
going to have very good relationships.
You're going to blame
And
people.
a lot of addicts and criminals, yeah, they are looking for perfect. And when it's not perfect and people fall short and things aren't fun all the time, and that's why a lot of recidivism happens. They get this built up in their head. I got it now. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to start a business and be successful. And you know what? A few guys do. I know some guys do real well, real well. But I know a whole bunch of other guys that gave up halfway through 2 weeks into a one job and are back out here, afraid to see you.
Yeah, because the grind is hard.
It is hard.
Life just doesn't happen. You have to chip away at it. And the other thing too is that when people get in the middle of something and they start working hard, not everybody, not but people want results way too
Yeah,
fast
the instant
nowadays. Just
gratification.
instant
Right.
gratification.
And that was
Why am I not the manager?
well, and that's the big draw for drugs. Like I can work hard and wait and feel happy later, or hit this thing, feel real great now and then crappy for a few days. And it gets this
Right.
cycle. And then it's like, well, I'll just do it later. I don't know. I don't want to get too far down that road. But yeah,
Yeah, I want to bring something else up about the military. I actually dealt with a lot of there's decent amount of gangs in the military when I was in.
really,
Yeah, these guys would click up in there. I know a guy that got arrested with a gun off base, and I never saw Adams again.
yeah.
Yeah, they would click up. There were some shootings on some bases while I was in.
Well, people bring things from the street
Yeah,
and it's somewhat human nature. And,
so
you know, Dana, my wife and I, we have some property out here. It's like one of those camping property sites where you can buy like an acre of land, a lot, and put your camper on and stuff. So we got that, a couple campers and a little side by side we ride around in. I got little Grateful Dead stickers on mine because I'm cool. There's like a little group of guys down there that were just joking around. They call themselves FTD. Now I don't really know what FTD stands for, but they're just really just some beer drinking guys and fish and stuff. And
right.
but they get involved a little bit of the politics of the campsite, or what have you, the area, the gated camping community, whatever you call it. So, well, they started hitting on Facebook like, oh, these guys hurt, it was just some guys who went on a flow trip and made some t-shirts, but it kind of got turned into like a clique out there, like, oh, you one of them FTD guys? I'm like, what? Like, look, I'm a guy who pays,
Well,
I don't like, I'm a guy who pays for a lot.
I'm lot 42, dude. Just back off.
Right, that's it. I didn't know. I mean, I've got all kind of numbers. None of them here. Okay. Yeah, I think it just kind of happens everywhere. Like people are political people. That's what politics is,
Oh
and
yeah,
gangs
yeah.
are a part of the streets politics. People that can't be part of the mainstream politics turn to street politics. Honestly, it's a pretty dangerous game these days.
Yeah, it is
I
anymore.
mean, I used to be part of the Mary Ridge Boys.
Oh
I was
yeah,
one of the Mary Ridge guys. You know
that
what I mean?
park, yeah.
Right? Because we got drunk in Mary Ridge Park. But then they chased us out of there. So then we
I
were
was
like,
a fake we there was a rap group, I mean we were middle school and they were called the Breckenridge Boys, and they were great guys. One of them's he's the head coach for the basketball team at Rittner, and they're knocking it dead. I'm pretty sure they had a wonderful season and won districts, but George Lee, he's one of them, and they're just guys that hung out and rapped. And so I made T-shirts with like a blue Bic pen, and we were the Woodson Terrace Boys, and I brought T-shirts on the bus, and
right,
people were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, they know I'm kidding," and they did. They laughed it
yeah,
off. Another one, Brian Haley. He's a very popular reverend.
yeah.
Very religious. They let me slide. They knew I wasn't trying to roll up
Right,
on them.
no doubt. Well, times have changed a bunch, but I've seen guys make all kind of different changes. Life's a heck of a journey. But on other prison alternatives, and we do have a lot of them out there already got drug court, right? You do have some inpatient treatment and stuff like that going on. And it goes back and forth as the politics of prison goes back and forth. Build more. They built all those prisons in Missouri in the 90s, and then they filled them up with the 85% laws, right?
Oh yeah,
And then things kind of dropped off and they started kind of chipping away at it. So they closed a couple of prisons because they couldn't keep them staffed. And there's just a lot of things going on in politics. It's hard to keep things settled, And one thing that guys who are needing help with is you have to define what it is. Like you have to define what something is. It goes with schools and it goes with prisons. What is a school? What do we want them to learn? Right? Let's not get caught up in a bunch of stuff. What do they need to learn? They need to learn math. They need to learn reading. They need to learn writing. They need to learn, what else do they need to learn? What we really need to learn, I think, these days is emotional control.
common sense wouldn't
Well,
hurt.
and a lot of it's emotional control. There's more teenagers in prison right now who doing something to someone after they broke up with their girlfriend. I mean, they react today with violence, serious violence.
Yeah, they don't know how to handle. Well, that's part of that pandering and babying and not pandering, but pampering these kids. They don't know how to take a rejection.
Well, the everyone's a victim mentality is foolish. One thing I learned during going through some restorative justice, and restorative justice is had a lot of success, not just in prison, but around the world. Like they used Bishop Desmond Tutu used restorative justice in South Africa. And after the Rwanda crisis, they used restorative justice to come in and say, hey, okay, a tragedy has happened here. Let's get together and talk about it. Let's have victims meet perpetrators. Let's, discuss it because we have to keep going. We can't just stop the
Right,
world. So when we want you to be okay, but we want you to know also that we have to get past it, even though as horrific as it gets, we have to get past it. And so that's what restorative justice is restoring justice, having those conversations, and punishment is part of restorative justice. I mean,
yeah,
not only do I think I needed to get an 18-year prison sentence, I don't know if I needed it, but when you commit a crime, you don't get to pick your sentence. All right. They thought I needed it.
it worked.
It worked. So who am I to say? Proof's in the pudding. I'm living good now, and I'm real scared about any of going back to that. Part of my success is I'm enjoying my success, and part of my success is I'm staying away from that fire. I'm not putting my hand on that hot stove again. I do not want to feel that
Right.
consequence again, and I do. Once you go the other way and you start just getting the respect of your family back, because one thing I knew coming home was not your responsibility to trust me immediately. It's not your responsibility to believe in me. It's my responsibility to show you I'm trustworthy, and people need to learn that. It's always your responsibility and your behavior speaks it. Every time you get caught, you don't say, oh, but my childhood. Oh, but I'm this. Oh, but I'm that. Okay, we don't care what you are. You're taking people's stuff or you're breaking the rules that we all set up. And there's wiggle room in that, and that's what we have courts for. And I'm not saying bad things don't happen, but people have to be more responsible. And I think there's programs that should start in school where kids have more counseling to deal with their emotions in class forums where they can confront each other in a safe way and talk things out instead of waiting until somebody's shooting up something, or people are feeling
Right.
overwhelmed, and you keep pushing in their head, I'm a victim. You know what a victim is? A victim is someone who has no choice. All right. So if you have no choice at
Right.
that point, you're a victim. The minute you make someone else have no choice, you're the victimizer. You're no longer in the victim category. You're now the
Y-
perpetrator, you know, and you have to answer for that.
I think one of the reasons they don't do that is sadly it takes too much time to train people how to be emotionally have emotional intelligence, have emotional control. And it's really the parents' job to teach a child how to do that. I mean, you have to set the tone with that.
It most definitely is. But we have a real problem in impoverished communities with people who never got their emotional training, and the breakup of the family unit is really,
Oh, that's a huge part of the problem. You have generation after generation of single moms, you know.
but yeah, but discipline leads to self-discipline, and structure leads to balance. And if you don't have discipline, you won't have any self-discipline. If you're not afraid of the consequences or respect the authority of those who are dishing out the consequences, then you're not going to get the balance you're looking for in life, right? Or be able to pass that on to another person, to be well-rounded, healthy.
Yeah, that's why that program is. I really like your idea at the beginning about introducing a program and earning the right to go into the military, because that starts to establish that.
Right, you are earning
Right.
something.
They've replaced drug court,
Right.
a lot of the drug court, because people were having difficulty with it, with a new program called diversion. It's kind of a derivative of drug court where they give, and it really prolongs even whether or not they're charged. Drug court, you get charged and then put on suspended imposition of sentence, SIS, or SES, suspended execution of sentence, and then you go to drug court. Now they're trying this diversion first, and if you don't pass that, then they issue the charges. So that's a new thing that's been going on, kind of a new trend. It delays a lot of things where in my world I'm kind of like, well, where's this case? I'm trying to figure out the disposition of the case because of am I keeping the evidence? Am I not keeping the evidence? And as far as inconvenient for law enforcement, that's what it is, because we're just trying to dispose of the evidence if we need to. But the program has some merit. We just have to get used to how long and protracted it is. So that's become a new thing on the scene. I don't really know enough on whether or not it's going to work, but they're doing the drug stuff on the front end instead of after the warrant was issued and as part of the plea bargain.
I get you.
And then
I'm familiar with both SIS and
yeah,
SES probation.
SES. You want to explain it, or you want me to explain it?
You can go ahead and explain it.
SIS, suspended imposition of sentence, means you haven't really been sentenced yet, but if you mess up within the first 5 years of your probation, you'll go back in front of the judge and be sentenced. So you don't really have any.
Right. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to prison, but you might.
Right. You just haven't been sentenced. SES, suspended execution of sentence, you were sentenced. And if you mess up, you go and do your time. And that's why you ask somebody like, well, what's your backup or what are you sitting on?
Right.
And then those people have a number. Though, and as a law enforcement officer, if you can't explain to the bad guy the difference between an SIS and an SES, he doesn't really want to talk to you because he knows more about what's going on than you. And in order to really have power in the streets as a law enforcement officer, you have to first have that knowledge. Because, like you talked about earlier, they're scared of the policeman that knows what they're doing.
For sure.
And one of the most basic things is knowing the difference between SIS and
Well,
SES.
absolutely. And a lot of times I remember, when I talked to police when I was a kid, I mean, it's a different thing. I talk to police now. They're really a lot of times trying to pick my brain, about stuff, not about like give up information. I don't have any information anymore that they certainly don't have. I'm not involved, so I don't know. They're
Right. It's all gone stale.
But just about what it's like really, and a lot of the younger police are they're trying to learn what are they really going to face, like what is in place. And, and I give some perspective on that. And I like to give a perspective on that, because the best gains are going to be in reality and not just fantasy fears and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I listen to a lot of guys on TikToks and stuff like that talk about prison. And then I'm not doubting their experience, but some of them, with the glorification. I mean, the worst thing about prison, in my opinion, I mean, besides the raping, was the boredom. I'm just kidding. I didn't get raped
Besides
before,
the
but
right. I mean, if we're
it
gonna,
was.
what bucket are we gonna be in? We're gonna be in the right bucket because,
Okay, the raping, the food, and the boredom. All right, the food's bad and the raping's done. Then you're just sitting
but
there.
if
It's
the
nothing.
raping's good, food's good, you might not be that bored. You know.
Right. You always got something to talk about. Guys are cracking on the yard. And that's not funny. I shouldn't joke around like that. I mean, things do happen to people, in prison. But in my experience in the prisons I was at, a lot of that's, you know,
Right, and
something
again,
else.
for the
But
people out there that think that we're heartless,
uh,
rape is a real thing. It hurts people.
no.
We do understand it. Sometimes a little
No.
levity is really all we're going for there.
And I can tell you, like when I was in prison, when I was at Jeff City one time, I was a barber, but people also knew I was kind of a counselor type guy, and I taught restorative justice classes and did impact victims classes and, did the ITC and stuff. So people knew I was kind of into that kind of thing, but they also knew I was kind of a street guy. I've been around a long time and stuff. So I had a nice balance of respect and, things like that in prison. So I was down and I went down to the whole cutting hair one time 'cause as a barber, which was my job at the time. Once a month, you had to go down and cut the guys in the whole hair, which all they got to do was they'd be handcuffed to the chair and you'd come behind them and either cut off all their facial hair, all the hair on their head, or both. There was no style, no nothing. In the whole, you only get one haircut, all off or no haircut.
Now, if you're in the
So when
hole,
you're in there a while,
let me ask you something. What if you're a guy in the hole waiting for a bed? Do you get a choice? Let's say you're the guy that's waiting out of bed, you
that
know?
varies camp to camp, but the camp I was at, no, you don't have any choice because they don't have enough time for that. You got 150 guys need a haircut.
Oh,
Come on out,
wow.
sit down, get buzzed. All right. So I had one guy come out one time, a little bitty guy come out. My only question to him, if I didn't know him, if I knew him, I'd be like, "What's up, bro?"
Right. A little more
They give
cordial.
me a message to tell a guy in the yard or something, right? But it was just some random yuck that I didn't know. I just had her face, you know what I mean? Some guys in the whole salon, you never even seen them in the yard, they just stay checked in or they'd stay checked in by staff. And by checked in, I mean put in protective custody. And even in protective custody, they weren't thriving, so they just kept staying in the hole. I mean, they just lost their mind and stuff. It's real sad situations. But this guy came out and, I could tell he was a little squirrely looking guy, so I asked him head or face or both. And he just starts bawling and Dave, you got to help me. And I'm like, I didn't even know he knew my
Right.
name, but a lot of people knew my name that I didn't know. But I was like, what's going on, man? He's like, my cellie keeps raping me. I said, damn, man. I said, why don't you tell staff, man? Say something. He's like, I'm afraid to say anything. He's going to hear me. He's going to come. I'm like, oh, man. Now, look, this puts me in a bad position. And I don't like anybody to get raped, but I don't know this guy. He could be lying just to get a cell move
Right.
or something, or he don't like his cell. He might be just trying to get him. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going on. And for me to go to staff and tell on somebody in that cell might be raping, well, that guy in that cell, I didn't see who was in the cell. You might be a very dangerous guy. If you find out I'm out here telling on you, even if it's about raping, well, you got me killed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you kill me, or I get. I mean, it's going to come down on me.
You have
Or
no corroborating information at all.
right. He's a rep. I have no corroborating information. I just have to. So I said, well, all right, man. I'll see what I can do for you. And so I had to think about it. So I went to a very trusted friend. You know what I mean? Because you don't bring this up to anybody. A lot of guys be like, "Psh, what are you talking about? You don't tell nobody that podcast child molester, or whatever he was.
Right.
I don't know if he was a child molester, this guy, but, I mean, I have my suspicions and maybe, I
Right.
don't know. I judge pretty much every book by its cover. But
Right.
anyway, so I had to think about it.
And a squirrely look.
Right. So finally, I just said, man, I went to a staff member that I had worked with and trusted and said, look, I don't like this weighing on me. I don't like the thought of leaving someone to be getting repeatedly raped. I don't care who they are. I'm not into that. You know what I mean? I'm not a part of that game. So I said, dude saying he's getting raped. Could you just do something and at least just get him out of that cell without getting me implicated? And because they know.
Or verify, do whatever, but I've told you.
Right.
Right.
Because a good staff member will know when it's time to just kind of save the day for everybody involved.
Right.
because they don't want to create more problems on their own. They know I ain't the kind of guy who had any problems. They like the way I move and all that stuff. I was a good liaison between staff and inmates. I could cool stuff off or get stuff going or help manage stuff and that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, the staff member I talked to, he just went and removed the guy from the cell, just like a cell move, like nothing was up. Not like a come extract him and da da da.
Right, just a standard shift.
Right, and they
Yeah.
moved a couple other guys just like something was going on standard shift and then took them. I don't know really what happened after that, but I felt more comfortable with myself after that, because
Right.
it's just
Well, that guy knows you facilitated that
he
move.
might. I mean, he never said anything. I find out who it was later, but he never said nothing to me about it. And at the end of the day, I knew he was kind of a creepy ass rapist too when I found out who it was, and I was like, you know what? I don't give a. I don't allow people to rape around me. Okay, that's just the way I am. And if you want to go too far,
Right.
you
If I have my
as
say
dangerous as
so,
you are,
yeah.
well,
If allowed to
hey,
speak.
honestly, I can be as equally dangerous as you if I feel like my life's being threatened. I promise you. So
Right.
take that into account. So
With no threat of being raped. If I beat you up, I promise I won't
right.
rape you.
And I mean, I've been like,
You're gold.
in the 15 and a half years I did, I got in a couple fights. I didn't really have the experience I know that a lot of other guys have had in other states and stuff with gangs and stuff. There was a lot of gangs where I came from. I never had any pressure to join one. Nobody ever asked me. I had a lot of say, amongst St. Louis guys and stuff. I don't know. I was able to manage. Now, some guys have a lot more mental health issues going on, and some guys, I mean, there's a lot of different factors, but a lot of things that could be helped with structure and just a consistency, fair and consistency from staff and a direct game plan. That's my take.
Yeah.
And three prosecutors for the whole city of St. Louis is not enough.
Yeah, no, yeah, 4, 3, and you think the other ones are checked in. So, anyways, I do think it is an interesting thing. The go to the army or go to jail. That's why we kind of started the episode on that, and I'm going to keep an eye on that proposal down in Florida and just
Right.
see what happens. I think yours is a nice twist to it. It's not just show up in boot camp and run around.
Oh,
It's an all voluntary
it's not
army.
fair to you or the boot camp, But if you run it, like I said, with some military people who can do a pseudo military style and smarter people that can make and work stuff out for people maybe that aren't able to do that. I don't want to cut anybody out for any reason if you have a legit disability or something, but there's something everybody can do in every situation. I mean, the Army needs somebody to peel potatoes too. They're no less heroes. I mean, I'm telling you,
Right,
all big
exactly.
systems got to run, bro. You know
Right,
what I
somebody's
mean?
gotta sweep the floors around
The
there.
toughest guy's got to get fed. Hey, I mean, that's real talk. I mean, not everybody's going to be a shining hero, but at least it's better than sitting and waiting your turn to get hurt in a prison cell or to lose your mind forever or to just waste your whole life doing nothing. I mean, at least you have an opportunity. And you always have the opportunity to waste your life and do nothing. But at least we as a people should give them an opportunity after one or even two or three mess ups, as long as they're not so injurious to the victims that a person can't redeem themselves and come out. I mean, I come out almost 50 years old and I feel like, I've received my redemption and I'm super grateful for it. Do I wish it would have came earlier? Sure. But when I wasn't ready, there was a judge that protected society from me.
Right. Well, the other thing
And that's just
too,
the way it goes. And there was
I'm sorry, they avoid the stigma.
no, go ahead.
The also allowing them to avoid the stigma of it kind of haunting them forever. And I love that your idea creates a pathway. That's a good solution. It's a good twist on the idea.
Right, man. Give it
I think it's a good one.
don't just let it right. Don't let a person just go and say, "Oh, it's over. Just don't do it again." No, but give him a shovel to dig himself out and to build himself a mountain if he wants to. But give him the shovel. You have to provide the shovel, and that means work, and disciplined work, and that is in every aspect of life. You're going to succeed no matter how they change the system if you work hard, if you're fair to others and you gain trust of others, because we all need help. Anyway, I think that's about it for this week. JW, unless you have any closing thoughts.
I want to do one closing thought.
Nice.
And it's not necessarily a closing thought, but you talked about Rwanda earlier.
Right.
And I wanted to talk about one interesting thing that came out of that genocide. Huge tragedy, but the interesting thing on the Rwanda front, after the genocide, the country began, because so many men were killed, being ran by women. And it's one of the most predominantly run by women governments in the
Is
world.
that right?
In Rwanda, you wouldn't think that, yeah, because that was the only people left to
That's
lead.
wild. If anyone hasn't seen Hotel Rwanda with Don Cheadle, I suggest you go see it. It's very moving motion picture. Have you seen it?
I have, long time ago, and all that tragedy was brought about by
Yeah, it's a
machete.
horrible thing, and they were showing. I mean, they show a lot, and there's a lot more to be seen. I saw another thing where they actually went and found the guy who protected the hotel and saved all those people, and he walked them through the country and showed a lot. And it was part of the restorative justice series on things, and it was really interesting. Now they have him locked up as a political prisoner, or something else is going on with him. But anyway, the movie itself is moving, and it's very telling, and it's a
He
real
pissed them women off.
he pissed somebody off, hey, I'm pissing them off every day over here, bro. I mean, I've been sanctioned quite a few times here, at the house. Yeah. I've been placed on wife
I know
arrest.
my m- yeah, my board of governors is pretty hard around here
I
too.
know that's right. All right, man. Well, if you have any comments or ideas on
Future shows, alternatives to jail. Go to the army, go to jail.
yeah. If you have any comments or suggestions on alternatives to incarceration or alternatives to prison, we'd be glad to hear them. You can go to our website at www.prisoncounts.com, or you can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. You can go to our Prison Counts Facebook page, go to our Prison Counts Instagram page, leave us messages. We will respond to you. You can email us. All right. We'll be more than glad to hear what you got to say. And if you say something good, maybe we'll have you on the show. You never know. Things can lead up to change for the better for everyone. Thanks for listening this
You
week.
fill a bucket with one drip, right?
One drip at a
One drip at a
time.
time
All right. We'll
sometimes.
see you next week. And we may or may not be talking about use of force in police work, but we'll be talking about something. That's our plan. Till then, we'll see you at count
Our
time.
guy's hard to
That's
track down.
right.
He's got a lot of chipmunks.
Well,
He's actually got a lot of chipmunks, as crazy as
right now,
that
you've
sounds.
probably piqued everyone's interest now. The chipmunk guy who has a lot to do with police brutality. That's great. All right, we'll see you at count time.
Good night.